All right, well, it's all fun to sit here and say these drafts were fantastic. Everyone did such a great job with this draft, but let's be honest, that's not how football works. There can only be so many winners and so many losers. So who were the losers? And the way I'm defining losers are who were these 7 teams that I felt like did not maximize their value as well as they could have, whether that's through trades or through draft picks that I just didn't love. And the first one on this list is kind of the obvious one if you've been following this channel. It is the Jacksonville Jaguars taking Trayvon Walker at number 4 overall. Or excuse me, at number 1 overall. He was number 4th overall on the consensus board. I didn't even have him as a top 50 prospect, which I know some people think is crazy, but like I just didn't think his production matched going 1st overall at all. You can make the argument, okay, spend a high pick on him because the potential is there. Sure, I wouldn't do it, but that's a fair discussion to be had. Taking him at 1 overall, though, even if it works, it's just bad process for me. It's bad decision making, and you do this 10 times, it's going to work out maybe 1 or 2 of them. So that's my concern with that one. Did really like the Devin Lloyd pick, and I even thought Chad Muma was a solid pick, getting someone who was, I know, they don't need linebackers. Yeah, but he was you're not drafting for need. You're drafting best player available. Who knows what happens? And Devin Lloyd is really good. So I think that with those 2 guys adding to their team, I believe like the Luke Fortner pick I didn't love. So it's not that they had a bad draft. It's not that they didn't add talent to their roster, because they did add talent to their roster. They just didn't add enough to justify me being too high on them, given the insane draft capital they had going in. You have the 1st overall pick. I expect you to get good players. Trayvon Walker is a player I don't even like, so obviously I'm going to be low on that. If you like Trayvon Walker, well, then they're not a loser to you. But again, this is my list of who I consider losers. Next is going to be the Minnesota Vikings, which this is a weird one because I actually liked their strategy of doing 1,000 trades, right? There's no inherent benefit to picking where your draft selection is. If you can get more value by making a trade, then do it. And if you make 10 trades and you get slightly, better, and the analytics say that each trade makes your draft capital slightly better, that's actually a good thing. So for me, it's less about the trades itself and more just about some of these selections. Like Lewis Cine and Andrew Booth, I think that was good. So I don't think this is a horrible draft necessarily, but I really didn't love a lot of their next picks. Ed Ingram, Brian Asamoah are 2 guys that I wasn't really too high on. They drafted both of those guys in the top 66 selections. And, the other guys, like there just wasn't a ton of guys who I loved. Some guys are even like not really analytic prospects. And so if you're an analytics guy, why did you take some of these guys? So they got a lot of players, and that part I like. So the chances are they'll hit on a couple of these guys, which is why I don't hate this draft necessarily. But there's 7 bad ones, and I'm just talking about who didn't maximize their potential. But it was more about the picks itself than the trades. I actually kind of like the trades. One trade I did not like is the Arizona Cardinals. I did not really understand why the Arizona Cardinals traded a 1st-round pick for Marquise Brown, who only has 1 year left on his rookie deal. The only way that this makes sense is really just going to be like if they think that Kyler Murray, if that's what's going to keep Kyler Murray in the building, in which case I actually don't mind that trade. If they think that that's legitimately how it works out. Giving up a 1st-round pick to get Kyler Murray and Marquise Brown would be an awesome trade. So you think about it that way, and it makes a lot more sense. But that's just speculation. I don't know if that's true. Now, they still had 3 top 100 picks, and I thought got 3 good players. At 87, Cameron Thomas, and at 100, Majai Sanders, 2 guys who I really liked. They were 2 of my guys who I was saying are getting slept on. I believe I had a 1st-round grade on Cameron Thomas, and I believe I had a 2nd-round grade on Sanders. Both of those guys fall, so those should be 2 players that really help out their defense, I think. Those are guys who the analytics say are underrated. So there you go. Trey McBride at 55, really like the player. I've just talked about, I don't know if they needed a tight end. That was just kind of my one thing about that. But again, maybe it's not the smartest idea to draft for need. I think they're competitive enough where they can draft for need. To me, I've always felt like you draft for need when you're competitive, and when you're not competitive, you just draft best player available. And even drafting for need is kind of, you don't only draft for your need necessarily. You could still, find your several needs and then get the best player, things like that. Or trade around to make sure you get fair value is another move. Because typically when you draft for need, you do end up reaching. The Cardinals didn't reach, but I just don't know if Trey McBride was the correct selection, given the fact that they have 2 good tight ends already. That's kind of my only thought about that. But, I'm nitpicking there. The real reason why they're on this list is simply just the Hollywood Brown trade, which might still end up being a good trade if they decided that, if that's what keeps Kyler in the building. So they're, what I know now, a loser, but might not actually be. Couple that I'm not like too low on, but I felt like they didn't maximize their value too much was like the Dallas Cowboys. Tyler Smith wasn't a bad pick. Again, they reached for a need, which I can't criticize I can't criticize the Cardinals for not doing that and then criticize the Cowboys for doing that too much. So I get it. I just wasn't as high on Tyler Smith as some others, and I didn't love a lot of the other. I thought they had some reaches across the board as well was my other thing. So again, not horrible, but it felt like a lot of these picks, especially kind of their first two picks with Tyler Smith and Sam Williams. Tyler Smith picked 24th overall. On the consensus big board, he was 40th overall. Sam Williams, who was picked 56th overall, on the consensus big board, he was 87th overall. So just a couple of reaches for positions of need, which again, I do understand to some degree, but I felt like there was other players they could have gotten that would still have been positions of need that they passed up on. So that's kind of my only issue with them. But again, that's not a strong one. I'm not too passionate about it. There are just some teams that are going to be, you have to have 7 losers, right? So even if you did a fine job of maximizing your talent, that's still not great. You want to do a good job. So that's how I feel about that. The Cincinnati Bengals are another loser here. Some people are going to have them as a winner. A lot of it just depends on how high are you on Daxton Hill. I was not too high on Daxton Hill. I was lower on him than most. So because of that, I'm obviously going to have a lower opinion of this. Again, that's my evaluation. Before I knew Daxton Hill was going to be a Bengal, I said, hey, I'm not too high on this guy. The Bengals draft Daxton Hill with their first round pick. So, okay, I don't love their draft. It's that simple. If you like Daxton Hill, all right, cool. We disagree. But yeah, that's kind of my reasoning for putting them here, because after that, they don't pick again until 60, where they get, Cam Taylor-Britt, another guy who, seems like could have been a bit of a reach. He was 85th on the consensus big board, goes at pick 60. And, they didn't fill up their biggest need either, where they could have used a guard, weren't able to get that since, the 2 guards that people were high on ended up getting taken out in round 1 before pick 31, also Tyler Linderbaum was, someone that was gone by then. They could have traded. Bengals don't love to trade, though, so I don't know. But there's someone who, again, it's not a massive loss. If you like Daxton Hill, then they wouldn't be on this list, but I didn't love Daxton Hill. How about the New England Patriots? They had some weird selections. There's really no denying that. Cole Strange was a strange pick at 86 on the consensus big board, goes at 29, and then Tyquan Thornton, 146 on the consensus big board, goes at 50. I don't hate Cole Strange, but were there better prospects available? I think so. I know Belichick has earned the benefit of the doubt, but I'm not just going to say, okay, well, in that case, it's not a bad pick simply because it's Belichick, right? If I don't love the pick, I'm going to say I don't love the pick, but I will acknowledge this guy does a better job than I do with this stuff, obviously. Marcus Jones and Jack Jones, I think, should be good. And listen, I guarantee you some of these picks, Sam Roberts at pick 200 and, Christian Hines at pick 210, those guys I'm sure will both be perennial all-pros because that's what Belichick does. He finds guys who are really good later in the rounds. That's what he does a great job of. Like Jack Jones and Marcus Jones, I think are both interesting players, undersized corners, but could be effective in this team. Bailey Zappi, I like. I had I don't really hate. Some people are saying, how could you put Zappi over Sam Howell? I think it makes sense. If you're looking for a backup, Zappi, I think, would be the better backup. There was a point when I was doing my evaluation process, I had Zappi ahead of Sam Howell. I ended up flipping it just because I like Howell's ceiling a little bit more, but Zappi's the better player today. I think there's no denying that for me. So I don't really hate that selection. It's really just those 2 top picks. They could have gotten more talented players and still gotten Cole Strange and Tyquan Thornton if they wanted to. So that's just kind of why I had some issues with this draft. But again, I still think that they'll end up with some good players. So that's kind of, no draft, you get no talented players whatsoever, right? There's always going to be pros and cons, just who had the least amount of pros. One here that I'm going to put on worst, but you could definitely argue it shouldn't be, is the Commanders. I just feel like the Commanders had some reaches for sure. Jahan Dotson, wasn't a huge fan of him. So wide receivers tough. I'm never really going to fault the team for drafting wide receivers just because it is so difficult to evaluate. But, 31st on the consensus big board, goes at 16th. Mathis was 75th on the consensus big board. He went at 47. Even Brian Robinson, it's like, I like Brian Robinson as a player. Don't know if he's worth a top 100 selection, even though he was someone I was higher on than most. The one saving grace is the Sam Howell pick at 144. He was, 52nd on the consensus big board. Some people had him as quarterback 1. So him falling all the way here, there is some potential with Howell. And again, you have a quarterback in Wentz who I think they like. I don't think Howell is coming here to take Wentz's job, but I don't think Hurts was drafted to take Wentz's job either. It's always good to have a plan B in place when you don't have a fantastic quarterback, and I think that's what Howell will be. So that's why there's the saving grace there, but I still didn't love it just because I didn't love a couple of their top picks, but that's, again, an evaluation thing. So what do you guys think? What are, I'm sure that this will get some downvotes because you're going to say, hey, my team wasn't a loser. What are you talking about? But let me know. Do you agree or disagree in the comments below? Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.